Hi everyone, it's me, Jennysrp, and I am here to give my 6-month COVID-19 update. So technically August 29th will be my 6 months since I suspect I got infected. I suspect I got infected February 29th, and I started getting symptoms the first week of March. You can go back into my previous videos to hear more about the beginning of my journey. As you can see, I'm still short of breath just getting started here. Since my last update, I actually had some time where I was doing better. We did have a massive heat wave in the UK, and I basically had no energy throughout all of that. My symptoms weren't necessarily worse. I did have some extra chest pressure, and I took antihistamines every day to I've just been generally taking antihistamines now, even though I don't have any known pollen allergies, just because it seems like I'm just more prone to react to things. So after the heat wave, I actually felt much better for, I'm not sure how long, maybe a week, maybe almost 2 weeks. I know that there were 2 weekends in a row where I was able to have long conversations with friends over video chat. And I usually can't do that unless I'm feeling quite well. And we try to connect every weekend. So it was 2 weekends in a row. Thankfully, I was able to do that. And then we're actually in the process of moving. I am packing. I can't share more details than that yet, but we plan to move in October. I had to clean the whole flat for the realtors to come and take a video tour, because I told them I don't want people coming in because, I don't want to get COVID again, if that's possible. I don't know yet. You can check out my previous video where I suspect I got reinfected at the end of April. But obviously I don't have the tests to prove that. So I cleaned the flat over a period of 5 days. It's just a 2-bedroom flat. I paced myself out, and I was real wired. I think I adrenalized myself to get through it. And then the realtors and the visitors came on the Monday, and by Monday night I had a sore throat, and that was last week. So it's been a week and a half now. Sore throat, cough, chest tightness, fevers, not high fevers, low fevers. They're between like 99.1 and just about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So, a GP's office doesn't really count a fever unless you're at 101 or 38 degrees Celsius. So, I think what I want to share in this video is that the 6-month mark is really pivotal, because a lot of people will start getting new diagnoses. And it's really not clear what people are getting diagnosed with or how they are getting diagnosed, but I work for Alex Howard, who started the Optimum Health Clinic, and I've been a patient of the Optimum Health Clinic since 2010. And right now I am moderating the community Facebook group, and there are a lot of people joining us who are long COVID patients who have not previously had chronic illness, and they're coming in saying their doctor suspects they now have ME/CFS. Now, I'm going to use the term ME/CFS for this umbrella of conditions going forward, just for simplicity's sake. Most papers now in the Western world are using ME/CFS as the name, but so ME stands for myalgic encephalomyelitis. That technically means inflammation of the brainstem, but very, very, very few people that are diagnosed with ME actually end up getting MRIs to validate that. CFS stands for chronic fatigue syndrome, and there's huge debate about the history, about where this name came from, how minimizing it is. It's a terrible, stupid name for a disease that is so debilitating. You could also get post-viral fatigue syndrome, chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome, or post-COVID syndrome, which I think a lot of GPs might use if you have a positive COVID test. And then other long-term diagnoses could depend on what your more acute symptoms are. So if you're someone that has ongoing heart inflammation or ongoing lung scarring or ongoing kidney abnormalities, you're probably going to be treated based on whatever biomarkers are coming up for you. But there are a lot of people that are discovering for the first time that you can be very, very, very ill and have all of your tests come back clean. And this is something that people with chronic illness have known for a very long time. People recovering from cancer have known for a long time. Even though you get out of cancer and all your tests come back clean, there are many, many years, often, maybe sometimes never, that you actually get back to normal functioning because, something is just systemically different in your body. So my diagnosis after getting... Well, actually, they didn't find the active virus that I initially got sick with, but I had very high levels of Epstein-Barr virus antibodies, I would say 4 months after my initial infection. So they assume it was mononucleosis, but they actually never got a positive mononucleosis test for me in the acute stage of my illness back in 2006. So that is going to be relatable to a lot of people with COVID. Most people with COVID in February and March couldn't get tested. And a lot of people I know that had acute COVID got tested and it still came back negative, even though the doctors that they were seeing based on their new symptoms concluded that it must be COVID. So some doctors are very staunch about needing a positive test result in order to treat you or diagnose you or run tests on you. And very few doctors are open-minded enough to know that the science is not perfect. It is a helpful tool, but it is not perfect. And they will continue to try and investigate further how they can help you. So, and this varies widely whether you're in the United States or in the United Kingdom. My experience in the NHS so far, I've had a different doctor every time I've gone to the GP office, and it's very frustrating trying to explain my whole history in 10 minutes every time I have an appointment. But my diagnosis from an infectious disease specialist back in 2000, it was actually 2008 before I got diagnosed, was post-viral chronic fatigue immune dysfunction syndrome. So this was California. From an infectious disease specialist. Some people get diagnosed from neurologists. Some people get diagnosed from their general family practitioners. So it depends who you go to. And this was after 2 years of investigating whether I had HIV. They kept testing me for HIV ongoingly. And I also have small red blood cells, small hypochromic red blood cells, and we can't find the reason for that. I think it's genetic, but it doesn't seem like I have any of the diseases linked to that. So we were investigating that for a very long time with a hematologist, and the hematologist was horrible to me and gave me medical trauma. So I think what I will say to that is I'm very nervous about people getting diagnosed right at 6 months with ME/CFS because there's not any treatment for it. I actually think it's more helpful to get post-COVID syndrome because there are ongoing studies and investigations about COVID-19 and coronavirus, so we don't really know what the long-term effects are, but there's more people studying SARS-CoV-2 than anything else in the world right now. So a post-COVID syndrome diagnosis is probably more helpful to get started with, because they'll keep looking after you as if you're a COVID patient. And whether they'll give you that diagnosis without a positive test result or a positive antibody result is, we don't know yet. So 6 months in, a couple of weeks ago when I was starting to feel better, I really was like, I really don't know how to differentiate between long COVID and ME at this point. But now that I've had a reflare of my COVID symptoms, I can tell you the difference between my previous 14 years experience of ME/CFS and my new experience with COVID-19. I have new types of headaches. I'm not used to getting headaches. I know headache can be an ME/CFS symptom, but I'm not used to getting headaches. And it's a headache that travels. And it travels sometimes I wake up in the morning and it starts, and it's a new type of headache. Sometimes it's all day long, sometimes it's just some of the day. It really varies, and I can't tell what triggers it or what causes it to be worse one day and better the next day. I also still have kidney aches, which I have not been able to explore with a GP yet. Because we're moving, I plan to get a new GP when we move and explore things further then, although I might wait till next year, because I know the autumn and winter might be worse for coronavirus, and a lot of people with COVID that are trying to get tests run are finding it very frustrating, because even in the NHS GP offices, they're saying, we can't even get these tests. Why do you think you can get these tests? And it's like, well, because this is supposed to be healthcare. So I think a lot of people that are experiencing chronic illness for the first time are going to have their eyes open to seeing just how limited healthcare in the Western world really is. And let's see, other new infections. So last month I talked about a UTI, kidney kind of sort of infection I have. This month I have a new infection, and it's just as unsexy. I have a folliculitis on the top of my right leg that I've had all month. I've been treating it with antiseptic cream. I've never had folliculitis before. It's not going away. It's quite itchy. I have heard from other long COVID patients, they've had a number of different skin issues. Previously, I had severely dry skin on my arms and legs that was just flaking everywhere. I didn't quite have it to the extent that I needed rash creams or anything like that. But it's like your body's not using water correctly. You're not getting the right kind of moisturizing. So I'm struggling to heal from this little tiny infection. And again, it's not so severe that I need immediate doctor support for. And I'm trying to minimize my visits to the doctor's office because, honestly, when you've had chronic illness and you have new things happening all the time, you kind of track, when it's really necessary to go to the doctor and when it's like, okay, they're just going to tell you to just tough it out. And I'm sick of being told to just tough it out, so I just tell myself first. But if it continues to get worse or doesn't heal over a certain amount of time, I will get it checked out. I still have alcohol intolerance. I still have days where I am just so drowsy or dizzy. I have new dizziness that I have to lay in bed all day. My blood pressure has been really variable. I tend to have high blood pressure, and I've had dips, not for like a moment, like postural orthotic intolerance syndrome, but actually like throughout the day, I'll have like low blood pressure that I've never had before. My temperature is still on the high side, and I generally, when I'm at my baseline, tend to run on the low side. So I have varying days of either lack of appetite and then like hunger and thirst. And again, nothing is severe enough for me to go and investigate further. And as you can tell, I still have a froggy throat. My cough is driven by chest pressure. So it's not like I get a tickle. Sometimes I'll get tickles in my throat and then I need to cough. It's not like I have a burning or an itching in my lungs. It's that I get pressure and I need to cough to kind of release that pressure. So I don't know what that is. I know that different COVID patients have different types of coughs. So you'll know that just like with ME/CFS patients, there's a huge variety of symptoms and different kinds of patients within these categories, which makes individualized medicine so important. So I'll talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned, I work for Alex Howard, and I've been a patient of the Optimum Health Clinic for 10 years. In February, I spoke to both my nutritionist and my, I think they're called therapists, but they're more like coaches. I've done like trauma therapy with her, but she coaches me through managing limitations and pacing and lifestyle and relationships and things like that, because having a chronic illness is very mentally taxing. So I know there's a lot of criticism around the Optimum Health Clinic because we talk a lot about psychology, but it's not because that the clinic takes the stance that ME is a psychological illness. It's because being chronically ill is very psychologically hard, and for a lot of people, it's beneficial to go on a spiritual psychological journey to help with the recovery, just like how Alcoholics Anonymous uses a spiritual psychological journey to overcome this physical disease of addiction. It's not that, it's an integrative philosophy or practice, and it's not for everyone, but I do know a lot of people who were never previously into psychology or spirituality that have found the concepts helpful, and you can find this in any kind of mind-body integrative approach teaching. Multiple sclerosis patients use it to supplement their treatments. Cancer patients use it to supplement their treatments. It can be used for any kind of illness. So I only bring that up because I know there's a lot of criticism about it. Also, I don't want to talk too much about my experience with the Optum Health Clinic because it has been varied, and if I say something that goes against it, I'm criticizing kind of what I'm working against. And if I say something for it, it kind of sounds like I'm selling it. But I have no stake in the game. I actually work for Alex Howard individually now, and not technically for the clinic, but I'm doing different pieces of work. I have found the clinic to be helpful because I couldn't get help anywhere else. It's individualized medicine, but it can be very expensive. But that's going to be the same for any other kind of private treatment that you go for, or integrative or functional medicine, anything that you try. I mean, if you go to acupuncture and you spend £60 on an acupuncture session, you're going to spend that kind of money on any kind of treatment that you try outside of your insurance or your national health insurance. And just to give you an idea, a regular blood panel, this is not for profit for the Optum Health Clinic. They help you order it through the different labs. But like a regular full blood panel will be about £90 to get. And then they can test you for other like Lyme disease and other bacterial infections and parasites and stuff through German labs, but they can go up to £400. So my advice, if you want to start on your own integrative, oh look, I've got twitches, integrative path, is set your boundaries around what is a healthy amount of money to spend for you. It's going to vary based on every single person. Don't let anyone tell you should be doing everything. If you're not doing everything, you're not trying hard enough. You have to set your own boundaries around how much money is a healthy amount to spend for you that doesn't cause extra stress, because the whole point of all integrative or private therapies is if it's causing you more stress, that's not helping. Stress is obviously very, very bad for your health. So that's my advice around integrative therapies. For me, it's been an adventure, and I'm kind of an experimental person anyway, so I liked trying different therapies and different techniques and just testing stuff out and sharing my experiences with other people. But it is very individual. You have to make the decisions for yourself and see what works for you. I have benefited from trying different things over long periods of time. So for example, you try a treatment for 6 to 9 months, and then you try a different treatment for 6 to 9 months. Like, give it time and do one treatment at a time to see what might help. Whew. Okay, what else do I gotta get through? In terms of my work, I work from home on flexible hours, about 30 hours a week. So, and I obviously work for Alex Howard, who has previously recovered from ME/CFS. He's extremely understanding of chronic illness and what the condition requires, and has always been very accommodating. So I'm extremely lucky with my work situation. And I can only, have my heart go out to anyone who is struggling to be able to find a way to work while you're recovering from COVID. A lot of companies now are adapting almost a permanent work from home environment. So it depends what kind of industry you're in, but hopefully there are jobs out there where you can work from home on flexible time and you can rest when you need to. I have no advice for patients that have children because I do not have children, but I definitely encourage people who are recovering from illness with children to band together and to find resources that work for you. And that goes for taking care of elderly parents too. I had that experience for a short while. There are a number of lists online of things that you should be tested for post-COVID, so I definitely recommend looking those up. The British Medical Journal has some lists of things that you should be tested for, but trying to convince your GP to run those tests could be tricky, so it might just take some time. I have heard of the My COVID Recovery, the post-COVID hub through the NHS. As of now, I don't hear that there's anything useful in that I haven't already learned through chronic illness over the last 14 years and all the work I've done. But if you're new to chronic illness, I'm sure some of the resources will be really helpful. They'll probably talk about mindfulness and pacing and having a good diet and anything you can do to support healing. Let's see. I know my posture is so bad. I'm just trying to get it there. Let's see. Some resources that I've been using. I report my symptoms on the COVIDZO app every day. I'm hoping that by doing that, they will see that how many long COVID patients that there are out there. I have received another test, and I took it right when I had a new flare-up of symptoms, and it came back negative. And I get my tests by being a volunteer for the COVIDZO app. But I think you can get them pretty much online anyway if you just say that you have symptoms through the NHS in the UK. I have an Oura Ring. I'm not wearing it now. I actually took it off to charge it. But I've been using Fitbits for a few years to track my steps and my pacing and to be able to track how much activity I do and what kind of crash it leads to. And then more recently, when they had the heart rate monitors, I could track my heart rate and I could see when my heart rate was spiking in the morning. That meant I was having a crash day and I needed to take it easier. So I would recommend some kind of smartwatch or heart rate monitor to help you just have a general tracking of what your pacing might look like. And by pacing, I mean you're going to see that there's a different limit almost every day for how much energy you have and how much you can spend. And the idea is not to spend all of your energy every single day because you need to build up reserves of energy. Whether or not that's actually possible, I don't know. I don't feel like I've ever been able to build up a reserve of energy, but I do know that trying to push to my maximum every day is not helpful. And my Oura Ring, I got it actually in March, I think, after I first got infected because I heard it could track your body temperature and I wanted to see what my body temperature was doing, but I'm kind of disappointed in it. It doesn't actually give you a temperature reading. It just says an amount of how much your temperature has changed over the night, and it does not match what my temperature changes on my thermometer. It also doesn't seem to recognize the difference between me resting all day and having an active day because my heart rate can be really high when I'm resting. So it'll say the next morning, oh, it looks like you had a really good active day yesterday and a good night's sleep, so you should be feeling great today. And I'm feeling terrible. So I don't know how helpful the Oura Ring currently is. It does track some of my sleep, and I can tell that when I haven't had enough deep sleep, I'm much more emotionally fragile because when you're tired, you see this in toddlers and stuff, when they get tired, the emotions just and I've seen a few more long COVID people, talking about how emotionally they're just so much more vulnerable because it takes energy to deal with emotions and deal with tricky situations. And when you are maxed out, any small thing can trigger you. Anyone with chronic anxiety might know this. When you are at your threshold, the littlest thing can electrocute you with some anxiety. And this is not your fault. You're not crazy. You're not more neurotic than anyone else. You've got systems going on in your body that are causing danger responses. So be patient with yourself. On YouTube, I recommend following Medinger, who goes by RUNDMC, which is funny to me. It was a channel about running, but obviously RUNDMC is a hip-hop band. But Medinger is a producer and a film director, and he has had long COVID, and he's making excellent videos and doing excellent interviews on his experience. So I'll link that down below, especially the video he did with Dr. Sarah Jarvis. It's just really validating for patients with long COVID. I also watch Dr. John Campbell every day. He is a PhD educator and an A&E nurse. And what he does is he looks at the latest research papers that come out all the time with COVID, and he kind of puts them in layman's terms so that we can understand. I don't always agree with Dr. Campbell's theories about things or his hypotheses, but we both come from very different backgrounds. He's a very data-driven, analyst and looks at things from a data perspective and his personal lens of experience. And I'm obviously I don't know what I am. I'm a multi-potentialite, but I'm also a 14-year chronic illness veteran who has experienced the medical industry in a very different way that he has. And I'm also much more attuned to socioeconomic situations and the way that people interact with each other, whereas he is, much more like, what does the data say? And I'm much more of a organic thinker, like a fluid thinker. So I don't always agree with some of his hypotheses, but some of his hypotheses are very great and and his interpretations of papers are really, really helpful. So I watch him every day. I also really recommend following Dr. Seema Yasmin. She's an epidemiologist that often shows up on the Wired videos for coronavirus, and I think she is a really great resource. And then also on Twitter, I like following Manish Juneja. I'm really sorry if I pronounced that wrong. It's #digitalfuturist on Twitter. He is a long COVID patient who works with technology, and he's a futurist thinker, and I'm kind of totally in line with that. So that's interesting for me to follow. And he's very compassionate for the ME/CFS community. He's learning a lot from them. If you are an ME/CFS patient, and you have been a chronic patient for a long time, I really, really am asking you with all my heart to please have patience and compassion for people with new chronic illness. A lot of you are jumping on things and going like, oh, I've had this for 25 years. Welcome to my world. Like, that's not really a compassionate response for someone who's experiencing the trauma of chronic illness for the first time. Not saying that all ME/CFS patients have done that. Most of the ME/CFS community has been very welcoming and patient and compassionate for new long COVID patients and helping them navigate like the new world of trying to get a diagnosis and how to manage their lifestyle and what kind of like mental coping mechanisms to use to kind of get through this, because mentally it's very challenging. For me, I had to completely change my whole life, and not just my whole life, but every idea of what I expected for my life and plan I had and how I approach everything in life. I had to completely change. So for me, I don't think you can separate it from a personal, spiritual, or psychological journey, because it is woven into the very fabric of everything you do in your life when you're dealing with chronic illness. So lots of different resources for that. The Open Medicine Foundation is a group of scientists primarily based at Stanford University, but they also have researchers at Harvard University and I believe Oxford. They have researchers all over the world working. Initially, it was to solve ME/CFS. But they are also doing COVID studies, because most labs now are required to be studying COVID-19 in some aspect, but they are taking they're taking COVID-19 positive patients, they're taking samples from them, and they're going to watch over the period of a couple of years to see how COVID develops and whether it develops into chronic illness and why. And from the ME/CFS community's perspective, we're really, really looking to see how COVID evolves into chronic illness so that we can get some keys as to why some people, it says 1 out of 10 people with symptomatic COVID might have chronic conditions. And it's the same with glandular fever and mononucleosis. 1 in 10 people with symptoms can get chronic illness. That is a huge number of people, and we don't know anything about it. We don't know anything about chronic conditions, why the body stops healing. I mean, there's plenty of theories out there, but we don't really have the proof as to why that's going on. So that's about all I have to talk about today. If you are launching onto your post-COVID diagnosis journey, I wish you all the luck in the world. I don't know if I'll do another update before October. I've been kind of staying offline a little bit because I'm trying to cut off all the places where my energy is leaking out where it doesn't need to be. And I am struggling with my threshold of emotional resiliency, and there is a lot going on in the world right now. I'm sure exacerbated by the pandemic, and for someone who is ill, it's overwhelming for a healthy person. But if you are ill, you need to kind of set boundaries around where you're putting your emotional, physical, mental energy, because you will crash, and you're no good to the world if you're crashing. I don't mean that, like, if you're crashing, you're no good to the world. I just mean if you have the ability to take care of yourself in any way possible, that is more beneficial than constantly running yourself to the ground by your own choices. I don't know, I'm not trying to make this sound like it's your fault if you're ill and not doing well, but at some point you learn that there's certain boundaries around where your energy is spent. And right now for me, I'm if you're on this channel because you were following my product reviews, as you can see, I've stopped doing those. I just absolutely cannot leak my energy out there like that anymore. I don't know why. I don't know where the switch came, but that's where I'm at right now. And I think some of these other resources that I'll be sharing down below in the description will give you plenty of stuff to follow up on. If I end up going to see a GP, getting some tests run, if anything interesting comes back, I will let you know, or if there's any dramatic changes. But at this point, I don't expect anything to really dramatically change over the next couple months, other than these cycles of feeling a little better, then getting sick again, then feeling a little better, then getting sick again. I have a very small, quiet life right now, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. So thank you for watching. I hope something in here has been helpful to you, and I am sending so much compassion. Please love yourself. Please take care of yourself as if you would your best friend or a child. You deserve it. Gaslighting is 100% going to be something you'll probably have to deal with from family, from friends, from people that don't believe you. They're going to say, how can you be sick for so long? Why can't the doctors find anything? Can't you get this test or this test or this test? People have the assumption that you can just walk into a doctor's. There's a protest outside. Big surprise. There's this assumption you can just walk into a doctor's office and say, hey, I need an MRI. Can you give it to me? And it just does not work that way. So share your experiences in the comments below. Let me know if you're heading up the 6-month mark in September, as most people will who got sick in March. And I'm wishing you all the best. Lots of love. And take care of each other. Be kind. The world needs more love. Keep going. Lots of love.